So, morning, it's 10. We begin. I can see, I don't know why we had this few. Hoping the others are joining us in short order. Today, I hope I'm clear. Apologies for last week. Not only were we required to attend some improved training, but even our lesson on Monday was not all that. But we tried on regardless. I think what I'll do maybe, if I can get enough requests from you guys, I shall be posting maybe the video to last lesson. The good thing is that I normally record them, so should there be a demand for the same, should there be a need for us to clarify what we learned last week, it's just a happy duty, or happy duty will just be to request for the same, and we'll continue. I shall oblige you by posting the same. For such an important lesson, I can see we are quite few. So I don't know what's happening. I hope it's not something that is technologically driven, but also hoping that maybe the others will be joining us in good time. I don't want to continue and to be prejudicial to the others. So maybe as we wait for the others, maybe we can just remind ourselves maybe what elasticity is, for those who may have forgotten. And we said it's a very, very important concept and tool and framework, if you like, in economics. And because economics, at the end of the day, is all about having two variables, economic variables, and comparing the effect of one variable on the other. The prime argument being that if there is a 1% change in one variable, if we call this variable X, and maybe we have two variables, X and Y, by how much in percentage terms will Y change, right? We said that, but when we actually argued that to be the primary argument for elasticities last time. We also defined 5 types of elasticities, but we also saw that elasticities are largely divided into whether demand is elastic. Here is whereby we talk about maybe Y changing by more than 1% change in Y when X changes. And when it's inelastic, we talk about the demand, the change in Y being, say, a less than 1% change. Say X is changing by 1%, Y is changing by less than 1%. We also saw arguments like perfect elasticity, perfect inelasticity, and of course this fence that actually transmutes maybe the fence that stands between, when we talk about the elasticity being the demand being elastic and the demand being inelastic, right? Basically how we interpret the same. Let me mute. Can hear some noise background. Okay. So today, and of course, I gave you a reading assignment. Go read about point and arc elasticity. I hope you read about them. Take these reading assignments seriously. They normally have this bad habit of recurring somewhere, right? So I think I've waited enough. I cannot see people coming, but anyway. Also, we also did, of course, determinants of elasticity is what makes elasticity to be regarded to be, or demand to be elastic, or what makes demand to be inelastic. We saw about 4, and I believe we talked about them at length. So how now do we calculate? You can see now we are moving from definition, we moved from the graphs, we're now moving from the tables. Now we get to the quantitatives. And of course, being elasticity, and because of the formula that I give you, the generic formula, the requirement will be that you will have to know at least a bit of calculus. And my requirements are very basic when it comes to this. My requirements being that out of the 6 rules of calculus, or differentiation specifically, I only require you to master the 2 simplest ones. They're normally 6: chain rule, quotient rule, product rule, and all that. Personally, for the purpose of this at least, I'll only require you to know and to master the 2 simplest one. Even the one that I'm putting there is a bit complex. The simplest rule in calculus is if you have an equation written as y is equals to k, and k is a constant. Maybe for some of you, this is just a revision. Change in y over change in x for a constant normally will yield one answer, and that answer will be 0. So it doesn't matter how big or how small the number is, as long as it's a constant: 1, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000. Even if infinity can be proven to be a constant, the change in y over the change in x will give us a value of 0. So that's one rule. The second rule is now what we have here, right? And I don't know, I've been having this for the longest, and I've been promising myself that I'll include that simple rule. Maybe I think I always suspect when I was making these slides, maybe I thought about it to be too simple to even warrant sharing. But as I've been teaching, I've always thought that it's important for us to include it. So that the second simplest formula is what you can see on the screen, that if you have a function or an equation, please note that when I say function, what I actually mean is what you used to call equation. So if you have it written as y, x raised to power n, of course, n is an exponent or a power, right? What is our change in y over change in x? This n will be multiplied by the coefficient there, whatever we have there as a coefficient. And of course, in the context of x, we always know that there is a silent 1 there. So n times 1, that variable, and then the power or the exponent is powered down by a factor of 1. So to give us n x n minus 1. And that becomes our differentiated function, dy over dx. If you like, change in y over change in x. For cross-price elasticities, of course, we shall be doing what we call partial differentiation, but the concept will not veer too much from these two. And actually, once you master those two, that is actually what is required for this course. Maybe when you will be doing intermediate microeconomy, maybe the lecturer atafungua pipe na waambie, maybe we need more out of you. But for this, I can promise you, we'll only need those two, and those two alone. I'll complain about this Zoom until the course is done, because I don't understand why it is giving me the option to admit people. I always say previously, once I give that instruction when I'm sending the link, that used to be that. But for some reason, I don't know, maybe kuna committee ili sit down mahali wakasema ya kuwa things have to be like that. But it actually brings about some inefficiency that we can do without. Okay. So copy this somewhere, copy this question up to the solution point. Maybe the next 1 minute for you to copy, and then we can continue. That you have that following demand function Q is equals to 50 minus 5.5p. And then you're told to calculate the price elasticity of demand when P is 20 and Q is 50. But measurement to us, and I cannot emphasize this enough, this being our first quantitative attempt, I cannot emphasize enough that in economics, we are very good mathematicians, but as opposed to mathematicians, the mark is not the be-all and end-all of everything. I cannot emphasize that enough. The most important thing, please be advised, the most important thing shall always be here. Where is my annotating nini? Wanna nilete the annotation? Oh, mulilete. No, now what to even these things, they have put them. These people are always making these things worse. So I was saying that is where the most important thing in economics. Economics uses some crazy maths. I did mathematics and economics at the university. Sometimes I used to find economics a bit more threatening, because in maths, once you get the answer, that's it. But in economics, you'll always be told to interpret that which you have calculated. So sometimes, arguably, we could find it a bit more challenging, right? So I trust that you have written the question. I'm still admitting people. For those who are joining us for the first time, and for those who have been attending the class, of course, there is the raised hand function. There's a participant function. I'm hoping going forward also to introduce something called Mentimeter. We learned last week, and I thought it's something that maybe I will not mind having as part of our lectures, so that you can actually even be giving your responses in real time, even your moods and everything. Nowadays, I'm told there's a big need for us to be very democratic. So I think I shall be availing that in my subsequent classes. So if you've written that, I wish to stop sharing my slide, and then I share my what? I share my whiteboard. Then a few. Okay. So the question, the demand function, if you recall, yes, people are still coming in. So if you recall, we had Q is equals to 50 minus 5.5p. And then you are told to calculate the cross price elasticity when P is 20 and Q is 50. So how do you go about it? Okay. Of course, as with every mathematical problem, we have to know the formula of interest. And our formula, if you recall, is change in Q over change in P multiplied by P over Q. So, of course, with elasticities, essentially you can break down that formula into two parts. The part in which you have to differentiate, right? The first bit. And then there's this other bit whereby you have to just know the values of P and Q. So we have to ask ourselves, what is change in Q over change in P? Okay. What is change in Q over change in P? If you don't mind, let me just write the equation somewhere over here. Okay. So what's our change in Q over change in P? The equation has two terms. We have 50, and then we have 5.5p. And you know, when you're differentiating, you differentiate term by term by term, because sometimes the equation can even have 5, 6, 7, 8 terms. You should see my PhD work, whereby sometimes we have even as many as 10 terms, and you have to differentiate term by term by term. The first term here is 50. And for 50, what you need to recall, right? And I'm being very deliberately slow about this because maybe some of you will have forgotten your calculus. Remember that 50 is a constant. Right? So it being a constant, change in y over change in x for constant yields us a value of 0. So you just plug 0 there because it's a constant. Kuna kitu unaweza fanya nayo. However big, however small it is, you plug it there. And then you continue. There is a minus there for this minus over here. And then we have 5.5p. And for 5.5p, you just have to recall that if y is expressed as a power of something, say n, change in y over change in x will give you n times what coefficient is there, n, x, and then you power down by a factor of 1. I was just reminding you that, right? Meaning that 5.5p, of course, there's a silent one there, which is a power. And if we multiply the 5.5 and 1, the power, it will give us 5.5 p1 minus 1. Okay. So this one will become negative 5.5 P. Of course, 1.1, 1 minus 1, sorry, is 0. From our indices and what? Powers, think in Form 1, if not nursery or class 1, right? Mathematics, we know that anything raised to power 0 should give us 1. So P raised to power 0 should be 1. So that our change in Q over change in P should give us a value of negative 5.5. Sawa. Right, but recall, you are asked to get so I'm being informed that I had checked out a bit. So let's just wait for it to share, and then we can continue. I don't think I checked out for a long time. So I was just saying, of course, the question is, you get the elasticity of production when P is 20 and Q is 50. And what you do is just go back to the formula. Remember dQ over dP, P over Q. dQ over dP, you've calculated it. It's 5.5, right? P and Q, you just plug it in the formula. 20 over 50. And then it gives you negative 2.2. Okay? But as I told you, in economics, we are good mathematicians, but rarely shall you just be told, calculate. Now watch your apple. Rarely. In fact, for this course, I can assure you, you can take this to the bank and get some money. I shall never tell you to calculate na nikuache hapo kwa mata. Lazima nitakuuliza one thing. What I'll ask you is to interpret. Sawa. My story, I've just told you that personally I found economics when I was learning it a bit that challenging because there was that expectation. In mathematics, where una calculate, bora umefika kwa answer, unaweka zile dash mbili za chini, wewe unaachiliwa hapo, you get your full marks. But in economics, most importantly is how you interpret that which you will have calculated. So what is this negative 2.2? Right? And why is it that in the slide, actually Mwalimu has turned it from a negative to a positive? Because in the slide, if you go, and I shall go for you to even just confirm, I'm not using negative. Lakini hesabu imetupatia negative. Mbona? Who is fooling the other? Is Mwalimu wrong? Short answer is Mwalimu is not wrong. But if you can remember your vector maths, and for those who did a bit of physics, you will have been advised that there are some things that intrinsically can never be negative. There are some variables that intrinsically can never be intrinsically, right? It is a Monday after all, can never be negative, right? If you think about even mass, if you Leo inakaa ni kama technology imedecide kucheza kama yeye, lakini I'm hoping that anyway, for the time that I am there, I am clear. I don't know what's happening today. I have everything on the best provider that I normally have here, but inakaa ni kama things are not cooperating, but anyway, tutapambana tunayo tu. Uzuri that it's going on and coming on very, very immediately. Okay. So as I was saying, there are some things that can never be negative. You cannot say, I travel negative these kilometers. You cannot say that this mkate has negative this mass. The least weight you can always get is 0. No weight. The least mass you can always get is 0. You can never get negative. So the negative in some of these concepts is direction. And for us as economists, we are happy when we get it is negative. Why are we happy? Because it just proves the theory or the law of demand, as the case may be, right? Negative slope for the demand curve. That is where the importance must be emphasized upon, that negative. It just proves that you're on the right track. It actually proves that negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. That the relationship is there, and to the extent of the relationship being there, the relationship is a negative relationship. When prices increase, demand decreases. When prices decrease, holding all other factors constant, ceteris paribus, we'd expect the demand to increase. Okay? So hakuna mtu amekosea mwingine, hakuna mtu amekosea hata kidogo. Inakuwa ni ya kuwa, actually it affirms that Jesus is alive or something. For Christians, right? Muslims will say Muhammad maybe was the last prophet or something. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? But at the end of the day, for our purposes, this 2.2, and this is now where you have to really be very, very keen in how I'll interpret this. Remember, when I was starting the concept of elasticity, I began by answering the question, or asking the question, if you like, that if there is a 1% change in price, say, by how much in percentage terms does demand change or vary, if you like? So this 2.2 actually makes us remove this question mark here, right? And we are saying that when there is a 1% change in price, the demand will change by 2.2%. I repeat again for emphasis. When there is a 1% change in price, the demand will change by 2.2%. HD, I don't know, there is a phone here. Global Nokia C22, don't say question, write the question. Okay, just write the question and I'll answer at some point. Today's lesson is very important. I don't know why people have elected not to come in their numbers. Maybe ni watu ambao wanajua what elasticity is and they feared that I'll just be a boring dude today. But today's lesson is very, very important. Yeah, umefika 60 angalau tuko sawa, but I fear for those who will not have come and then they'll say, mwalimu hakufunza. Okay? So it's very, very important for that. So you can talk also about a more than proportionate change in demand as a result of a change in price. Hizi interpretations zote ukinipatia, you get your full marks. I'm never fussy about some exactitude in marks. Mi nikiona ya kuwa students angalau you are a thinking student, mkono yangu huwa inalegea sana, and I normally tend to just give you your full marks. So I can see there's something in chat. Some people leaving, some people entering. Global Nokia is asking, why do we assume the negative? As I said, Global Nokia C22, and thank you for that because it allows me an opportunity to emphasize this. The negative is just important from an interpretative point of view in affirming the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. Unakumbuka? The curve is negatively sloped. Na hiyo ndio kitu ambayo tunatumia ku emphasize ama kunini ya kuwa at least ukiona hiyo negative, we think that at least the theory is intact because that negative affirms that negative relationship. But practically, just the same way you cannot say, I traveled -205 kilometers to Kisumu. I think that is the distance, the kilometers between Nakuru and Kisumu. The only way we can interpret this one is that actually you are not traveling from Kisumu to Nakuru, but actually you are traveling from Nakuru to Kisumu. If you can remember vectors, mlikuwa mnachora hivi, mnasema hii ni V. Na ikienda hivi vingine, bora ikuwe parallel, you used to call it negative V. So we are actually arguing that that negative actually affirms the theory, but more practically for us, because you cannot have negative proportions. You cannot say I ate -2 slices of bread. We'll start looking for some space for you in Madari or something. You cannot say I travel -205 kilometers to Kisumu from Nakuru. I should have written this one as from maybe. The only way that negative is valid is actually if we turn this the other way around from a scientific, from a mathematical point of view. So the short answer to your question is that that negative is actually affirming the theory, but practically you cannot talk about when you are interpreting that you talk about -2.2 because this is a positive magnitude that is also a positive magnitude. So they cannot be negative. Magnitudes by their very nature are positive. Just go back to science now. Kama umesahau physics kidogo, utakumbuka hiyo physics. I assuming that ulifunzwa hiyo physics ukiwa shule. So that's the short answer to me. I hope I have settled your thirst. Any questions? You can raise your hand. You can chat with me. Okay. So, and maybe just by way of emphasis, short answer is maybe that is why. Let me just wait for it to load. Yes, it has loaded. And just by way of emphasizing to you, that is why the answer there was actually a positive, right? Wengine wenu mnafanyanga na kwa sababu nyinyi ni wanahesabu wazuri, mnaona mwalimu aliandika hapo 2.2 na mnashindwa mwalimu alikosea, mwalimu kakosea ama nini? Mwalimu hakukosea. It's just a case that just to be brave, sometimes tunakata kona saa zingine na tunasema that is the answer and that is actually how you interpret it, right? And maybe that is actually I left even the most important interpretative value. Utakuta ya kuwa hiyo 2.2 is somewhere there past 1, and because it's falling in the region of elasticity, you can simply say the goods demand is elastic. And it will be elastic simply for that reason. Let me just emphasize it enough, because at the risk of boring some of you, 2.2 percentage change in quantity demanded, you can see that it is a more than proportionate change, right? Where is that more than proportionate change is coming from? Price is changing by 1%, demand is changing by more than 1%, more specifically 2.2. So because of that more than percentage change, we call that change more than proportionate. And from an economics point of view, we simply say the demand is elastic. I won't do the other ones. I'll leave for you to do them in your free time. But of course, you'll see that we'll be interpreting them a bit differently. There's one in which you shall do, and you'll confirm it to be 1%. Kikuja hapa kwa hii nini ya kuinterpret, mutaona ni ya kuwa hiyo 1 equates to what we called unit elasticity. So we just say the demand is unit elastic. Okay. And then lastly, the third one, there are 3 on the slides. Do them in your free time, right? You can confirm kama mwalimu alikuwa sawa akizifanya. You'll get an amount of 0.825. Ukikuja hapa kwa hii spectrum, utakuta ya kuwa 0.825 should fall somewhere around there. 0.825. Na kwa sababu iko kwa hiyo region ya green, we'll talk about a 1 percentage change in price giving a 0.825% change in demand. And because it is changing less than proportionately, right? Less than proportionately simply because the price will have changed by 1%, the demand will have changed by a value, a magnitude less than 1%, more specifically 0.825. So we'll simply conclude that the demand is inelastic rather than elastic. Okay. It's very, very important. That's why I'm really emphasizing, kama kuna maswali ulizeni, kama kuna mahali hujaelewa tafadhali niulize, so that tukitoka hapo, we are just about to now enter even a more rigorous, I don't like using the word hard, but a more rigorous concept of cross price elasticity. Nitawaomba muulize maswali tafadhali, but these other ones tutaziangalia in your free time, muzifanye mumakinike. Kama kutakuwa na maswali, of course I'm here for you. I am here for you. So the second type of elasticity that I wish us to discuss, and maybe even before we discuss it, let me go back. I can see something in chat. Can you rewrite the formula? You have these formulas. Who is this? This is Franklin Mudaka. Formulas mko nazo kwa nini? Unajua, if we have these resources, mko nayo kwa hii slide, mko nayo kwa vitabu, resource book. Ukienda hata ku Google, ukiandika tu price elasticity of demand, itakuletea mpaka formula. Why should mwalimu rewrite? Maybe tu I'll just show you by all emphasis. Na hii ni kujistaki ya kuwa pengine kuna classes ambayo pengine au kuwa ama kama ulikuwa, there must have been something quite beautiful happening in your locality. Something quite interesting happening in your locality. But we explained all of this last time, right? That is the elasticity. That is the conceptual formula. We call that conceptual. We called this computation. Okay. So allow me not to go deeper into it. But you have all this anyway. That's what I'm encouraging you. Ziko kwa slides, mko na slides, ziko kwa kitabu, resource book, mko na hiyo kitabu. Kwa hivyo it's just a question of you Just going back. Uliza wenzako. University, kuna mwalimu alikuwa anatuambia degrees are communal. David Miner is saying some formulae are blank in the notes. I'll look and revert. I will look at revert, but if they are blank in the notes, I believe they are not blank in the what? In the slides. Okay. Kwa hiyo lakini hiyo ni mada muhimu. These notes I wrote them long time ago. But I check them before I distribute them. So, but I'll check. I'll take you at your word and check. And I'll give you a response in our next class. That is a promise. An ironclad promise for me. Somebody wants me to do an example. I am throwing the challenge back to you. Let us do the cross price, because at a cross price itakuwa na example zake. Maybe the concept will actually gel as we do it. Now maybe after that, if there will be a need for me to redo one, maybe out of the two, I'll do one. I'll come back and redo one of them. Haina shida. And that is the beauty of this technology. Ya kuwa munasema, I respond to it. Now, wakati tuta introduce Mentimeter, it will even be better, because actually you shall be doing it in class live, and I shall be getting this feedback in real time, and I shall be acting on the same. So I cannot thank you enough for those who are actually giving me these feedbacks. Okay. So if we go back, mimi napenda kuanza kutoka kwa base of the argument, and then we build it up. And if you remember when we were doing determinants of demand, we talked about these two price relationships. Sorry. Using Billy. What we've been doing for the last few minutes is what we call on price elasticity of demand. But if you remember, we argued that there is another aspect of price relationship with demand, whereby you may have two goods, and if we call these two goods good X and good Y, it might be the case that the change in the price of X is observed to lead to a change in the demand of good Y. Or vice versa. It might also be that it's the price of good Y is changing, and because it's changing, the demand of good X is also observed to be changing. If you recall, we argued that if it is the case that an increase in the price of good X, say, leads to an increase in the demand of good Y, meaning that the increase in the price of one good and the demand of the other good shares a positive relationship, we call these goods substitutes. Okay? They are goods that you substitute. When the price of one goes up and you decide to consume less of one, you might decide even the other good is just as, even the other good Y, for example, is just as good. Okay. Also recall that we argued that it might be the case that the price of X increases, and because the price of X has increased, the demand of good Y is observed to decrease. Because of this negative relationship between the price of one good and the demand of the other, we call these goods complements. Okay, complements because they are used together. So if I am using car and petrol, na bei ya petrol imepanda vile ilipanda Friday, ilikuwa Friday ama lini? Saturday, I believe. I decide not to use my car. So if I don't use my car as I don't use today, leo kama ningekuja town kuwafunza, I will have some petrol station here, will have been a bit happy. Will have sold at least some few liters of petrol. But because I'm not using my car, meaning that that petrol guy is less happy, because car and petrol go together. So the demand of petrol or car use will have gone down as a result. Okay. Na tukaiachia hapo. So cross price elasticity attempts to now measure the magnitude of change between these two substitutes and complements. And that actually even the value will give us an indication of whether the good is a substitute or whether the good is a complement. So how do we formally define cross price elasticity? Okay. Okay, so I have promised you people, maybe time allowing, we shall do one of this and interpret it. So, msijali, time allowing. If not today, then maybe next class, right? Or maybe next class. Wacha tuifanya next class so that mkuwe na hiyo changamoto ya kuifanya kwanza, and then maybe we can come and do it together as a class. So you'll see and you'll agree with me that the way we define cross price elasticity is much the same way that I have built up that argument. That if we have two goods, say good X and good Y, you are just asking yourself that if there is a 1% change in the price of good Y, for example, by how much in percentage terms does the demand of good X change? Now, utakuta economics ikuwa rahisi when you start from the questioning aspect. Chinua Achebe actually defined education as that. Simply as developing the questioning attitude. And that's why personally, you see me starting by the question and then I answer. So that even if somebody were to wake you up at night with a gun and tell you to define, you'll have no problem defining the same. This is a question essentially that we are answering. Wachana na hiyo kukram, sijui measuring the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one good X due to a 1% change in price of another related good Y. This is actually what we are seeking to answer through cross price elasticity of demand. Okay. I'm still admitting, unfortunately. Now, sometimes I ask myself whether there is something I'm not getting from this. So, for obvious reasons, and economics is criminally a logical discipline. But if we are talking about price of good X going up and quantity demanded of good Y also going up, because of that relationship being positive, you would expect a positive cross price elasticity to indicate that good to be a substitute good. And if we are expecting the same increase in price of X to lead to a decrease in the quantity demanded of good Y, meaning that the relationship is negative, by logic, you'd expect a negative cross price elasticity to indicate a complement. That's the nature of the good between the two good. Njole Mbeyu, please stop writing. Think I'm lecturing enough. Unless you want to write to me, you are not loud enough. You will please spare us from this writing. Even, especially today, now that I think the Zoom people have updated their app, and the things that I was used to seeing them, they have even updated the annotation. Sioni my favorite lesser pointer, so I don't know. when sometimes things change and they fail to make sense. Okay. So in terms of the interpretation, and I like having this framework so that at least even before we go much ahead, you'll at least be knowing, you'll start getting a bit comfortable with even the interpretation aspect of it. In cross-price elasticity, we are actually interested in the nature of relationship between the two goods. And the way to interpret is whether the goods are such as to give us goods that we are calling substitute goods, or whether the nature of demand is to give us goods that are complementary. Also, the other aspect, and it's not really covered here, is actually the strength in relationship. And what we normally say is that the further away one moves from zero, the stronger relationship becomes. On either sides, whether you're talking about negative elasticity, the nearer one tends towards zero, the weaker the relationship becomes. Okay? Which begs the question, if we were to be given a hisabati, na ukalculate na upate ya kuwa ni zero, what will zero imply? Use the chart to answer. I'll pick the first three questions. I'll give marks to that. What will zero imply? Unaenda away from zero, relationship inakuwa strong. If you remember, actually, let me just remind you so that you don't say Mr. Nyanjong huwa tu anafunza vitu ambavyo saa zingine hata yeye haelewi. We talked about close substitutes. And economics is one of those disciplines, unfortunately, that sometimes we introduce concepts before you are ready to fully understand them. When you talk about close substitutes, is basically two goods, if those goods are good X and good Y, whose relationship is so strong as to make them close. When you talk about close relatives, you are talking about people who you have strong relationships with. You don't only have relations, but you have the relationship can be deemed in all senses to be strong relationship. So that is actually what we mean by close substitutes. Even I think when I was introducing it, I was lamenting this fact that sometimes we are actually introducing this before you people. You are necessarily ready. Okay? So actually that essentially is what we mean. That unaenda away from zero, the relationship is becoming strong. Unakaribia zero, the relationship is becoming weak. What is zero? What is zero? That's the question that I'm asking. And let me just write it here for emphasis. Go to chat, please, and answer this question. Or even if you can even just raise your hand. Hii tu ni logic tu rahisi. Hii hautakikani ukue ati umefanya economics for cross price elasticity. Write that somewhere. Answer it. Wale ambao watakuwa wameandika kwa nini chat, I think I'll pick you up. Right answers, you get your marks. The people who will raise their hands, if I give you an opportunity, will also be getting marks. Now, you know, once you do it like that, hata ukipata mark moja, you're only working for 29 for cuts. Sasa inakukaribisha to 30. And I'll try to be as democratic as I can. So how do you interpret the value of zero for cross price elasticity, right? And the logic here being, I cannot emphasize this enough. You are going away from zero, the relationship is strengthening. Actually, we call them strong or close substitutes. You are going near to zero, the relationship is weakening. We call them weak substitutes. Either sides, whether it is negative, complement, ukikaribia inakuwa weak. What is the value zero? What does it imply? Okay, as you populate that chart, you know the beauty of chart inabaki siku hizi. It doesn't get rubbed. Hata ukiingia kwa Zoom, if I was to give you the credentials, you'll see your answer and your registration number. Those are the only thing. Those are the only two things that I need. So of course, it's all about computation. And you can see the basic structure of our elasticity formula. Maintaining. It doesn't change because we conceptualize them the same way, whether they are, what do we call it? On price elasticity, whether it is cross price elasticity, whether it is even the elasticity of production, I shall be discussing in our next chapter. The concept does not change. What changes are the variable. And because we are talking about the quantity demanded of X and the price of Y, or the quantity demanded of Y and the price of X, right? You'll see them changing to that extent, right? So you'll see it being a little bit challenging than on price. On price, of course, it is price, quantity demanded, two variables. Huyu ni bibi ya huyu. Hana bibi mwingine, hana bwana mwingine. So it's that simple. Lakini ukikuja hapa kwa cross price, kunakuwa na changamoto kidogo. Changamoto inakuwa kwa sababu variables, don't forget, for the reason that we interpreted them earlier, that you're talking about in the context of good X and Y, change in the price of X leading to change in the demand of Y, but equally also the change in the price of Y leading to change in the demand of good X. You are now seeing we have PX. No, sorry, PY. QX. QY down here. And what have I not included this one? So you can see even that aspect of crossing coming in because kunakuwa na crosses mingi. Hence the name cross price elasticity. I can see I have about 18 charts. Please continue populating. Right? Wale ambao wanatumia mashine mbili, please make sure that kila mtu ambaye anaweza kuattempt hiyo has attempted it. I'll pick a few and then I'll give you the answer when it comes to that. Okay? Kwa hivyo formula lazima zikuwe mbili. Haziwezi kuwa moja for that reason. Okay? Because we can talk about the price of X affecting the demand of Y, but equally we can talk about the price of Y affecting the price of X. Kwa hivyo formulas zitakuwa moja, lazima niwapatie mbili. Okay? And how do we read these formulas? Hizi nini za nje, subscripts za nje, they talk about the price. So unaona PY, PY. PX, PX. Na subscripts za ndani zinaongelea demand. Okay. So that the first one, let me just choose an empty space. Don't forget that is a question that we are asking. elasticity of demand of X given the change in the price of good Y. That's the first one. The second one, the elasticity of demand of good Y given the change in the price of good X. Na wakati unasema, bora tu ujue tu that general formula for elasticity. Ile tuliwapatia previously. QX, no, actually hata ni, because we are talking about two variables, X and Y, X, Y, given the change in Y over X. Kishajua hiyo, it's just a matter of just plugging them in. E inakuja na hiyo over PY multiplied by PY over QX. Na hii, the same way, hii kama ni Y, anza na Y. Y PX multiplied by PX over QY. It becomes easier with practice. And that's whereby personally I cannot emphasize enough. Wale ambao they are mathematically nimble, able, mtajua kuwa practice makes perfect. So don't be scared by the mathematics that you shall do today. Hii ni kitu ambao mkikaa chini na mkuwe na ile azma ya kuifanya, it becomes that bit better, arguably. Okay? So let's do a question. Ama kuna swali yoyote? Maybe because of the question that I have set, I shall now emphasize that kama kuna swali, raise your hand and we discuss it so that it doesn't clash with the questions at the end of the day. But in the meantime, just take down this question. Alafu tuendelee na ku-unpack this concept of elasticity. 2 minutes, actually even less than a minute. So the following two demand functions, and now you can see the added layer of complexity in this, because now we are not talking about only one, but we're talking about giving you two demand functions for each of the demand of the two goods. And you're told that the two goods are related but you're not told how the nature of the relationships. And then you are told to calculate the cross price elasticity. So how do you go about this? We have those two, QX. Let me just screenshot it so that when we begin the question proper, new in our point of reference, right? QX is equals to 1,000 minus 2.5 PX, price of X, plus 3.2 price of Y, PY, if you like. And then you have QY is equals to 750 plus 5.8 PX, price of X, minus 4.5 PY, price of Y. So you're told to calculate the cross price elasticity of good X at PY is equals to 20 and QX is equals to 35. On the assumption that all of us have this written down. And I'm reading your nini, and I'll pick one and shall discuss at some appropriate point. So it will allow me to share my whiteboard. I always like using the Microsoft one because, and the older version, I don't even like the newer version much. I don't know why these new people that we normally have, when they update, they even spoil things. Instead of making things better, my experience is that things become a bit worse, right? So you are told, you are given the two functions. Functions, as I said, they're just equations. So this is question 2. So we have QX is equals to 1,000 minus 2.5 PX plus 3.2 PY, and QY is equals to 750 plus 5.8 PX minus 4.5 PY. So calculate CPE of X at price of Y is equals to 20. Quantity demanded of X is 35. So of course, as with all maths problems, we have to get a solution. In cross price elasticities, all mathematical problems, as you know, start with a formula. But here, if you recall, I gave you not one, but two formulas. There's formula 1, and I'm not talking about the resets. Elasticity of X given the change in price of Y, but also there's an elasticity of demand of Y given the change in price of good X. And that is a formula here. So you will realize that we have a problem that we didn't quite have in our first example. That problem being, hapo kuna bibi wawili ama bwana wawili. Pale bwana ama bibi alikuwa mmoja. So which one to use? Do we use the first one or do we use the second one? That is one problem. The other problem that we have is actually in terms of these two. Remember that previously we only had one bwana or bibi. We only had one function, right? So unaona hii inakuwa a little bit complex, and you must make sure that you make the right decision at the right time. Actually hapa mapema sana, because if you do not make it at the first instance, utakuta unajikanganya. Okay. A way to see this is once you know, or you are with the formula here. Hapa tuko na PY, hapa tuko na QX. So ukikuja kwa hizi formulas, ni mgani anaongelea price of Y and quantity demanded of X? Is it the first formula or is it the second one? Tutaona ni the first one. Okay. And that becomes very, very important, because now that also further guides us of which of these two to use. Na mahali tutagaidika ni hapa. Because hapa tunaongelelea change in the quantity demanded of X with respect to change in the price of Y. And if that is the case, hatuwezi ipata hapa kwa hii ya pili. We can only get it in the first demand function. Okay? So utasema, of course, the formula is, let me just turn this to black. Right? I want it to be quite that. Right? Our formula, of course, we have established is the first one. Change in PY multiplied by PY over QX. Take no BF6, please. Stop touching. Right? So, of course, utaifanya tu, ukishafanya hivi, just do it in the same way as we did in our first question. Lazima ugawanye hiyo mara pili, because utajua kuna mahali ambapo lazima udifferentiate. Alafu part ya pili itakuwa kupata the values of PY and the value of QX. So we have to ask ourselves, what is change in the quantity of good X given the change in the price of good Y? Okay. And our equation hii, wacha nilete hapa chini. Niandike tu hivi, QX is equals to 1,000 minus 2.5 PX plus 3.2 PY. So remember, ile ingine ilikuwa na terms mbili, hii iko na terms tatu. 1, 2, and the third term. First term is a constant. Any constant differentiated will yield a value of 0. Ya tunamalizana nayo. Alafu kuna hii term 2.5 px. Na hapa ndio sasa tuna introduce kitu ambayo inaitwa partial differentiation. Okay, wakati unaona ya kuwa equation iko na more than 2 variables on the right hand side, as we have here, px and py, whatever is here becomes very important. Whatever is in the denominator here becomes very important. Remember, in our first question, which was q is equals to 50 minus 5.5p, hatukuwa na hii shida because there is only one term on the right hand side. So we are doing change in q over change in p. Of course, you'll differentiate with respect to that one term. Lakini kwa sababu hapa ziko mbili, px and py, it becomes very, very important to know what are you differentiating with respect to. You are differentiating with respect to whatever variable you have on the denominator here. Anything that is not in the denominator, you treat it the same way as we treated that constant term. And because the second term has px, right? And because you're differentiating with respect to PY, hapo hatuna uhusiano. Hakuna kitu unaweza fanya hapo. Treat it the same way as you treated the first one, right, as 0. Let me just change the color. 0. Okay? And then we come to the third term. Hapo kuna PY. And because we are differentiating with respect to PY, we can do business with that third term. And the business, we'll just do it the same way as we did before. But if we have yx raised to power n, change in y over change in x becomes n times 1, nx, n minus 1. So that is, there's a silent 1 here, of course. So 1 multiplied by 3.2 will give you 3.2 py 1 minus 1. Okay? So that becomes 0 minus 0 plus 3.2. 3.2 py raised to power 0. Anything raised to power 0, you know this is 1. So change in qx over change in py is 3.2. So this implies that our elasticity of demand of x given the change in the price of y is 3.2 multiplied by, because there's this other part here, py and qx. And you have been given py and qx up here. Py is 20, qx is 35. Just plug them in there. Terminally, 3.2 times 20 over 35. I've done this many years to know that it is 1.829. And that is our answer. But as I told you in economics, and I guarantee you, let me repeat for those who never heard me the first time, for this course, it's a guarantee. But 90 times out of 100 in economics, rarely shall you be told calculate without this animal, that animal known as interpretation. Because math is a tool for us. Okay? We use math to make sense of economic realities. So we must interpret. Okay? And for us to interpret that 1.829, we'll simply go back to our spectrum of interpretation. Let it load. Thank you. And start interpreting away. Here. Okay. Utasema hiyo 1.829 iko upande gani? Lazima itakuwa kitu ambacho kiko hapa. 1.829. So, one way to interpret goods are substitute goods. And why are they substitute goods? Because of the positive. Au kuona iko negative. Kama ingekuwa negative, maybe ingekuwa mahali hapa. Tungesema the goods are complements. But this time, wakati umecalculate first shot, it has given you a positive magnitude. So that's one way to interpret. But if you are mathematically minded, and me, I like thinking from the point of mathematics, even before now you go to the economics of it. That question that we were asking, that there's a 1% change in the price of Y, by how much in percentage terms does the quantity demanded of X change as a direct result of this price changing by 1%? And that question mark there is now where we plug this value of 1.829. So that will say that a 1% change in the price of Y yields a 1.829 change in the demand of good X. Okay. Very, very important indeed. Let's do the second one. And then you'll advise me whether we'll go back to the first one or we shall just continue with the course. Right? I'm looking at the charts. Somebody is saying, please pardon. What do I pardon, my friend? Like, I'm not understanding. I said, you don't just say you don't understand in the university. In the university, you say, hapa ndio mahali sijaelewa. Ndio umezungumzia na nimeelewa up to this point. Ndio tunajua. Because now when you tell me you're not understanding, it's like telling me to repeat. And I can assure you, because of time, I wish I had all the time to repeat. I'm not able to, because you are now 80 in the 81 participants. Can imagine if I was to repeat for each and every person. Hatuwezi endelea. Na hapa ndio sasa inakuja the point of view people now even going back and revising after the lecture becomes very, very important. Kindly hapo kwa differentiation imenipita. Tufanye hii tuone. Tutafanya tu moja ama mbili ya hizi. Andika hii. Andikeni hiyo 2 minutes and then we can continue. The demand functions for two related goods. And you're told those goods are good X and good Y. You're not told how they are related. And you realize that the demand functions are just much the same as we had before. Now you'll realize that here you are not given the quantity demanded. You've just been given prices. Okay. So where do you get your demand, quantity demanded? You're told to given the demand schedule. So there's a demand schedule somewhere. Then you're told to calculate the cross price elasticities when the price is 10, when the price of X is 10, when the price of X is 45, when the price of Y is 28, when the price of Y is 45. Let us do these two. Right? Let us do these two. Because of time, let me use my lecturer credentials to even make a choice of which ones that we do. And then I leave the other ones, for the one for 45, for you to do in your free time. Okay. So I read again, the demand functions of two related goods, X and Y, both in toy market are as below. QX is equals to that, QY is equals to that. And then you're told to, those are the prices, and then you're given a demand functions here. I don't know whether you have this. So you'll allow us to just go ahead. But if you need, there will be need for you to copy this. You will advise me in the chat, and then maybe I'll give you like 2 minutes or so after the question for you to copy the same. Okay. So how do we go about this? When the price of X is 10 and the price of Y is 28. Okay. So let me still go to the board. Okay. So we're in our third question. And then you've been given the same equations. Right? Qx is equals to 1,000 minus 2.5 px plus 3.2 py, and qy is equals to 750 minus, or plus, sorry, 5.8 minus 4.5 py. Okay. As I said, you first begin with the formulas. Just write a formula somewhere. Here, cross price, I always highly advise you to first know the formulas, and most importantly, how to. Right? Formula, first formula. Second one, the elasticity Y with respect to the price of X. That is change in QY, change in PX multiplied by PX over QY. Ukizifanya hivi inakuwa very, very important, because now you cannot miss. Ukiona hiyo ni PY, utajua umekosea mahali. Ukiona hiyo ni QX, utajua umekosea mahali. Ikiwa QX itakuwa QY. And the trick is just begin with the first one. Hiyo tuweka DQX, DQY. Alafu kama unajua the formula of how we do it with the generic elasticity, with practice, I believe it is something that becomes a bit easy. At Px is equals to 10. Najua sasa hiyo Px ndio itakupatia indicator. Let me just write the X properly. Which formula to use? Because pahali formula ambayo iko na Px utakuta si ya kwanza, itakuwa ni ya pili. So you will just write the formula here. Sorry. Y given X is equals to change in QY over change in PX multiplied by PX over QY. Okay. Sasa hiyo pia itakupatia decision of which of the two equations you should be playing with there. Na itakuwa ya pili, because hapa differentiation itakuambia you are differentiating with respect to quantity of Y. Right? So utajiambia, but what is change in QY respect to PX? 750 constant will give you 0. What are we differentiating with respect to? We are differentiating with respect to price of X. And because the second term has price of X, PX, we can do business with it. So that one will be what? Plus silent one is there, of course, 1 times 5.8. That will be 5.8 PX 1 minus 1. Minus 4.5 PY, because we are differentiating with respect to PX and this one doesn't have PY, treat it the same way as you did the first term. Constant, it gives you 0. So what do we remain with there? We remain with 5.8 PX 1 minus 1. That will be 5.8 PX raised to power 0. Anything raised to power 0 should be equated to 1. So that will be what? 5.8. So that our elasticity, Y raised to the price of, with respect to the price of X, will be 5.8 multiplied by PX, right? And QY. We have already been given PX as 10 because we have been told at PX equals 10, if you remember. Okay. Hapa. Right? Lakini for us to get the QY, okay, we need to go back now to the demand schedule. And this is now where the demand schedule comes in handy. Because we'll have to ask ourselves, when the price of X is 10, what is the quantity demanded of Y? And that's where we have the price of X is 10. Our QY, which is the last column, will be 255. Okay. When the price of X is 10, the quantity demanded of Y will be 255. And what you do is just to take that value and plug it in. Right? So that one will be 5.8 multiplied by PX, of course, is 10. PY is 255. That one will be 550, 58 times 2, 55. Somebody can do that very fast and give us, but also me, I can do it on my end. With a calculator, 58 divided by 255. Yeah, that will be 2.227. So that one will be 0.227. And there you'll have calculated the cross price elasticity. But as I said, in economics, that animal again, that dreaded animal of interpretation, Okay, you can say goods are substitutes. Okay. And also reinterpret it in terms of a 1% change in the price of good X gives a 0.227% change in the demand of good Y. Okay, so let's do the last one and then we can call it a day. Questions allowing, and I think I'll go back to the 0, that our class assignment, and give you my view of what the answer should be. So remember we said, sorry. So you can say at P, is it Px or Py? Let me just confirm tafadhali. Yeah, it should be Py. So at Py is equals to 28. Of course, you have to know, first of all, what formula to use. And out of the two, the one with Py is the first formula, right? So you'll say the elasticity of X given the change in the price of Y, that will be change in Qx over change in the price of Y multiplied by the price of Y, quantity demanded of X. So you'll tell yourself, but what is change in Qx over change in Py? Go to the two equations and you decide which equation to use. And what is on the numerator here should guide us of which equation to use. And in my humble opinion, or actually supported by facts, the equation will be the first equation. Let me just write it here. Qx is equals to 1,000 minus 2.5 Px plus 3.2 Py. So we are differentiating this. And 1,000 will give us 0 because it's a constant. Second term, 2.5 Px, we are differentiated with respect to Py. So because there is no Py there, treat it as a constant. So that becomes 0. And the third one should be, because it has Py, we can do business with it. And we do the business with it in the traditional sense. There's a silent exponent there, 1 multiplied by 3.2 will give us 3.2, Py 1 minus 1. Hii ni kitu tumefanya before. So that one will be 3.2 Py raised to power 0. Anything raised to power 0 should give you 1. So change in Q of Qx over change in Py should give you 3.2. Right? And then recall that you've been told at Py is equals to Q28. So we already have 28. We already have this. But we don't have this. Qx. To get Qx, we'll simply go back to the demand schedule. A lot of maths today. And we have our Py there as 28 there. And you'll see that when Py is 28 Qx, because that is actually what, I don't know whether it is clear enough in your screen, but QX is the second column, which gives us a value of 400. So once you have that 400, you just plug it in the formula. So our elasticity becomes, because we've already done this, that is 3.2 from here, right? From here, times 28, we already have it from there. And then we have gotten QX is 400. And that should give you a value of what? According to my calculator, 3.2 times 28 gives us that, divided by 400. It will give us a value of 0.224. So that becomes 0.224. And you'll wish and you'll want to interpret it you'll wish and you will want to interpret it the same way as you did before. That you can just talk about the goods because of the positive results. You'll talk about the goods being substitute goods. But also you can interpret it this way that we have been doing, that a 1% change in price of Y this time yields a 0.224% change in the quantity demanded of X. Practice makes perfect. The more you do these things, I think even for those who are saying they're not understanding, maybe you've gotten somewhere with our second example. If not, degrees, consult US nini sema huyo lecturer kuna vile alikuwa na utiaji, it wasn't making sense. Can you show me? I know some of you will have gotten it, na mtakuwa watu ambao mtaridhia kuonyesha wenzeni. So I'm going back now to my original question. I want to see whether there are people who got the question right. I want to see whether there are people who are deserving of, as it were, my points. So the question was, if you remember, let me remove this. Wakati unaenda mbali kutoka zero, right? The further you move away from zero, relationship inakuwa strong. Wakati unakaribia zero, the relationship is becoming weak on both sides, whether it is negative or positive. Wakati una nini zero, inakuwa weak. So what is zero? So what is zero? Let me look at the charts. Please sijapata hii topic poa, tume link kwa YouTube. So what is zero? I believe Dennis Mureka said, changing the price of one good has no impact on the quantity demanded of the other good. right? Goods are not substitutes or complement. They are related in consumer preferences and choices. That's a good answer. Joy Sunday, at zero, goods are perfectly inelastic. You've carried umelete ukiritimba ya on price elasticity huku, wacha tuone. The demand for one good is less influenced by the price of the other good. Ujagonga ndipo. Goods are no longer considered as close substitutes and the customers are more likely to switch from one good to another. Technospark. I want to pick two and then I'll give you answer. And the answer might surprise you. Implies the two goods are not dependent on each other in terms of their demand. Infinix Smart 2D. Right? Two goods are independent of each other. Very good. Now I can see I'll agree with those people. And actually, maybe you are having different permutations of this. And I like, and I'm encouraged by the people who are having permutations of these two words. No relationship. And I encourage you, if you remember, just pursue logic. It was just a logical answer. You didn't even need to have been an economist. But Kama, if you are going far from me and the relationship is strengthening, and if you are coming near me and the relationship is weakening, meaning that wakati tutakuwa pamoja at zero, there will be no relationship. So at zero, we cannot talk about the good being either a complement or a substitute for that simple reason that zero will indicate the total absence of any relationship between the two goods or service. So congratulations for those who will have had a permutation of that aspect. I believe the person who said, I think, what did I say? What did I say? What did I say? What did I say? The people who are asking how I've done differentiation, just go back to wakati hii mnasema YouTube, or even the beauty of nowadays, you people, I envy, I wish I was an undergraduate at this age. When you can simply not understand something in class, go to YouTube, type differentiation, and have a basic understanding of even what I was on about. You know, me, I'm coming and I'm assuming, ni watu wameingia economics, walifanya hii. So I am picking it up from here. So that if you, for some reason, you forgot or something, it's a simple thing of just you going back and just try to remind yourself how you are doing these things in zamani. Right. For those who write Rudia, amkui mnajisaidia because mimi nataka mtu aniambie hapa ndio sijaelewa. Yeah, Dennis Murweke, I think, is the one that I saw and which caught my eyes first, and I said, yeah, it's a kind of similar to what I'm saying here, although he has used 1,001 words. Changing the price of one good has no impact on the quantity demanded of the other good. In other words, the goods are not substitutes, they are not complements. They are unrelated in consumer preferences and choices. So, in the absence of any question, it is 11:53. I've been talking for the last almost 2 hours. One thing I just want to encourage you, hii ni kitu hata mkirudi na mjifanyie, ni kitu tu ya kukua familiar with it. In the university, don't expect utaonyeshwa kila kitu, utanini kila kitu. We always have an understanding that kuna mahali ukiona kuna ulegevu kidogo, and I think I'll give an assignment or two based on this, which also will give you time enough for you to even do more practice on the same. So don't really feel beat down that maybe you didn't understand. Half of the classes I went through in the university up to my PhD level, nilitoka class without really saying, lazima kazi hapa ni kazi ya ziada. But the trick is just to go back and say, kama uliandika kitu, can I get something out of it, and so on and so forth. So TechnoSpark is saying thank you for the lesson. Thank you also very much, TechnoSpark. As I said, next time I'll really attempt to use a Mentimeter. Watu wa Egerton wakinipatia credentials, I'll introduce Mentimeter, and we'll even have a better way to interact in terms of hata mnaweza niambia kama ninatupa mbao, mnaweza andika hapo you are throwing wood, so stop throwing wood or something, so that we can actually have this as interactive as possible. So you guys have a good day. We meet on Thursday, God willing.